Hey everyone, Rocky here, and welcome back to the DevOps Nexus channel. Okay, let's just jump right into today's explainer because we are tackling the absolute heavyweight champion of the AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner exam. I'm talking about the shared responsibility model. If you're prepping for your CLF-C02, you really got to pay close attention here, because this single topic covers a massive 30% of the exam's domain. That's literally nearly a third of your score, entirely dependent on understanding exactly who is responsible for securing what when you're operating in the AWS cloud.
So, here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to hit the core concept, look at security of the cloud versus security in the cloud, talk about shifting responsibilities, run through some real-world exam scenarios, and then wrap it all up with the golden rules.
All right, Section 1, the core concept, renting in the cloud.
Before we get bogged down in all the technical jargon, we really need to understand the basic relationship you're getting into when you use AWS. Think of it exactly like renting an apartment or staying in a hotel. AWS, they're the building owner, the landlord. They're responsible for the physical building itself. They handle the electricity, the CCTV cameras in the lobby, the fire alarms, elevators, and the security guards at the front desk. But you're the tenant. When you walk into your apartment or your hotel room, you've got responsibilities too. You have to lock your door. If you just leave your laptop and your wallet out on the bed with the door wide open and someone walks in, well, you can't exactly blame the landlord for that, right? AWS works exactly the same way.
So here's the absolute crucial takeaway you've got to memorize for the exam. AWS is responsible for security of the cloud, and customers, that's us, are responsible for security in the cloud. Of versus in. Now, I know it sounds like a tiny semantic difference, but it's basically the central mantra of cloud security. AWS builds the secure fortress, but you have to secure everything you choose to bring inside that fortress. Moving on to Section 2, security of the cloud. AWS's domain.
Let's explicitly map out what your landlord actually takes care of on your behalf. We're talking physical data centers, power supply, cooling systems, physical security guards, network infrastructure, servers, and the virtualization layer, which is the hypervisor. Notice a theme here? If you can physically touch it, or if it involves the actual data center building, AWS handles it. If a hard drive fails on a server rack in Ohio, AWS sends a technician to replace it. If a power grid goes down, AWS fires up the backup generators. You are never going to have to worry about the physical hardware or the foundational global network. That is all security of the cloud.
All right, Section 3, security in the cloud, the customer's domain.
Now let's flip it around. Once you're inside that ultra-secure, beautifully maintained AWS data center virtually, what's on your plate? Well, you are responsible for creating your IAM users and making sure they have strong passwords and multi-factor authentication. You are responsible for configuring security groups, which are essentially your firewall rules. You've got to manage your applications, your customer content, and choose whether or not you want to encrypt your sensitive data. AWS isn't going to automatically do this stuff for you. If you launch a server and you don't install an antivirus, or if you accidentally leave a database wide open to the public internet, that falls entirely under security in the cloud. You put it there, so you got to lock it down.
Next up, Section 4, shifting responsibilities, how the service changes the rules.
Okay, pay close attention here, because this is where the exam loves to set traps for you. The line between AWS and the customer isn't just drawn in the sand in the exact same place for everything. Notice how the customer's management burden literally shrinks as we move from basic infrastructure to managed services. The golden rule here is, the more AWS manages, the less work you have to do. Look at EC2. That's basic infrastructure. You manage the operating system, your apps, your data. But move down to RDS, a managed database service, and suddenly AWS takes over managing the OS and the database engine. Move even further down to Lambda, which is totally serverless, and AWS is managing almost everything. The infrastructure, the runtime, the scaling. You basically just manage your function code. For S3 storage, you're just managing your data and who has access to it via bucket policies. So the responsibility line shifts dynamically based on the exact service you choose.
I really want to zoom in on this specific comparison right here, because trust me, it's a very, very common trap on the test. Amazon EC2 versus Amazon RDS. If you're using EC2, you're renting a virtual machine. That means you are fully responsible for installing Windows or Linux updates and patching that operating system. But if you're using Amazon RDS, the managed database service, AWS handles the OS patching for you. You really want to keep that distinction front and center in your mind.
All right, Section 5. Real-world exam scenarios, Socratic pop quiz. Time to put all this new knowledge to the test. I'm going to throw a scenario at you straight out of the exam playbook. I'll pause for a split second, shout the answer out loud if you know it. Scenario 1. A power outage occurs inside an AWS data center. Who is responsible? Think about it.
It's AWS. Remember, anything related to the physical data center, the electricity, cooling, or physical infrastructure falls strictly under security of the cloud. That's the landlord's job.
Okay, let's try another one. Scenario 2. An EC2 instance gets hacked because Windows updates were never installed. Who is responsible?
Yep, that's entirely on the customer, like we just talked about. EC2 is infrastructure as a service. You own the operating system. If you skip the patches, you're just leaving your hotel room door wide open. Okay, last one. Scenario 3. An S3 bucket becomes publicly accessible because of an incorrect bucket policy. Who's at fault?
Again, it's the customer. AWS gives you the incredibly durable storage infrastructure for S3, but your bucket policies, your object permissions, and your public access configurations are solely up to you. AWS isn't going to stop you from sharing your own data with the entire world if you explicitly configure it to do so.
Finally, Section 6, Golden Rules, Memory Tricks for the Exam.
Let's lock this in so you absolutely crush it on exam day. Write this memory trick down. Seriously. Security of the cloud equals AWS. Just think of the O and of as outside. The physical infrastructure, the concrete, the outside perimeter. And security in the cloud equals customer. Think of the I and in as inside. Your data, your users, your applications, the things you bring inside the environment. Of is outside, in is inside. Super simple, right?
And here are your rapid-fire keyword cheat codes. If an exam question mentions physical servers, power, cooling, or data centers, boom, the answer is AWS. If a question mentions data, identities, permissions, encryption settings, or your application code, boom, it's the customer. Mastering this shared responsibility model isn't just about passing this one section. It literally sets the foundation for understanding everything else in the security domain, like IAM, key management service, CloudTrail, the whole shebang. Which brings us to our final thought. AWS builds this world-class, impenetrable digital fortress. But who truly owns the consequences of unsecured data? Well, you do. AWS hands you all the tools, the heavy-duty locks, the safes, the alarms, but it is entirely on you to actually turn the key. Study this model, know exactly where those lines are drawn, and you're going to totally ace that cloud practitioner exam. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and keep on learning.